The situation I've been put in is so absurd, you know. How can the Church of England bar one of its own clergy from ministry, from preaching, simply because he taught what the Church of England teaches? Marriage should only properly be understood as being a lifelong, exclusive union of a man and a woman. This is only about the sermon. There's no concern about any actual behaviour with anybody. There's no evidence I've ever behaved inappropriately. There's no evidence of anything that I've ever done wrong. It's just about the sermon. All I was doing was saying the Church of England's teaching is positive and you may accept it. And so, I'm sorry, I'm not going to apologise for a sermon which says you may accept the Church of England's teaching. I was ordained in the Church of England to proclaim the Church's teaching. I can come in, I can sit and worship in the congregation, but I wouldn't be allowed to sit here at the front as a minister. I wouldn't be allowed to go up to the communion table to preside over the Lord's Supper. My fear is what has happened to me is what will happen to lots and lots of people 5, 10 years down the line. So 5 years on, they still haven't told me specifically what the safeguarding concern is. And I've asked repeatedly, show me in the policies, in the guidelines, what this is supposed to be about. What have I done wrong that relates to safeguarding? So this is where it started. I was here for 5 years. Until my time was unkindly cut short. It's a good school in lots of ways. I was very happy here, but unfortunately the Christian gospel is not totally welcome, even though it's a Church of England foundation. It's 5 years since I gave a sermon in the school simply setting out the acceptability of the Church of England's own teaching on marriage and the relationship between the sexes. The school reacted very badly, and there's been lots of reporting about that. But from the Church of England side of things, there should have been no problem. Someone working for the Church of England should have said, well, that's what the church teaches, fine, move on, nothing to see here. But the diocesan safeguarding advisor decided to take action. He initiated a safeguarding process against me. And one stage in the process is that the safeguarding team recommend to the bishop, and that's Libby Lane is the Bishop of Derby, that a person should do a risk assessment. So they recommended that I should have to do a risk assessment with a psychologist to assess whether I was a future risk. And the bishop accepted that recommendation. But I said, well, I'm not going to do that risk assessment, because the way it's set up, it was based on me accepting that I'd done something wrong and then assessing whether I would do something wrong again in the future and harm people. And this, they wanted me to do this with a psychologist dealing in sexual offences and whatever, and clearly deeply inappropriate for my situation, where I simply gave a sermon. It seems to me that the safeguarding process has been effectively weaponized against me, against someone willing to speak about the church's traditional teaching on marriage and related matters. And that has to be profoundly worrying, that someone who holds the church's own teaching is treated by people within the church as a safeguarding risk. And it looks very much as if safeguarding is being used as an excuse to push me out. And if me, then presumably others who hold this view will be potentially subject to the same sort of process. As soon as you step out of line for what the hierarchy want you to say and the image they want you to present, you could have safeguarding used against you. So because of the safeguarding done against me, the bishop refused to give me permission. As of the 1st of January 2021, I've had no permission or authorisation to preach, to lead worship anywhere. And that covers not only Church of England churches, but all churches. I'm not allowed by law to preach anywhere in England. The strange thing is, I can walk into any church, just like this one, anywhere in the Church of England, but I'm not allowed to minister. I'm not allowed to be up at that end of things. So, the pulpit, I could be invited to preach and I wouldn't be allowed to. I'd be breaking the law if I went up those steps into the pulpit in a service and started speaking about God's love. And it's been, 4.5 years since I've been able to give a sermon, give or take. And that's kind of fundamental to being a minister of the gospel, is being able to preach, being allowed to share what God's love revealed in Jesus Christ and that we read in the Bible, to share that with people, to help them to understand it. And I can't do that. And that's difficult. Deeply frustrating as it is, it's really hard to imagine leaving the Church of England. It's almost easier to imagine cutting off my own arm than it is to leaving the Church of England. I'm born and bred Church of England. My family, as far as I know, has always been within the Church of England. My dad, now retired, was a vicar in the Church of England. His dad was a vicar in the Church of England. My mum's dad was a vicar in the Church of England. My mum's brother, a vicar in the Church of England, also now retired. So in a fairly literal sense, it's in my DNA. And so I want to be back in the Church of England and ministering and upholding the gospel. But until the bishop turns around and says, yeah, the whole thing was wrong, we need to give Bernard permission to minister in the church, I can't do anything. Gregory Jones KC, I cannot speak highly enough of him. And I was overjoyed when I read his rulings because he was the first person in the whole process to admit there were problems. One of the things that he said was that Justin Welby had misunderstood the scope of his powers, which was talking about the way that he had dismissed things and not looked at the problem in the right way. And if he had looked at things in the right way, if he had understood what he was supposed to be doing in handling this complaint, he couldn't have reached the decision he did. He said at one point in his judgments, the case is egregious, outstandingly bad, and the error is gross. Just total mess for which the bishop has responsibility. And other people have done things wrong too, but the bishop is ultimately responsible. She should be held to account. And at every step, Justin Welby has batted it away and said, no, 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 don't want to hold someone to account for failing to follow safeguarding rules. I've made a safeguarding complaint and it has been ignored by the Archbishop of Canterbury. And that's a very serious matter. He is not allowed, by all the rules and regulations, simply to ignore a safeguarding complaint. He has to pass it on to the National Safeguarding Team. He's obliged to do that. It's his duty to do that. And it simply hasn't happened. And that seems to me an indication of the way that Justin Welby just wanted to get rid of it. He just wanted to push it away, dismiss it. This is too difficult to deal with. I want to protect one of my bishops. I want to protect the first woman to be a bishop in the Church of England. How embarrassing would that be? He didn't want that to happen. So rather than properly look at the complaint, it was just push it away. If they'd admitted early on, yeah, we made a mistake, we didn't follow the policy and procedures, very sorry, then, I'd have been through a tough time, it would have been difficult and upsetting, but we'd move on. But 5 years later, I'm still in limbo, I'm still unable to do stuff, and they won't admit the mistakes. That's all I want. I want the problems dealt with so that I can get back into ministry, so I can get back to doing the things I love doing.